Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
So welcome to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant, the podcast where we dive into strategies that empower tax professionals to grow their practices while delivering unparalleled value to clients. I'm your host, Lee Reams II, founder and CEO of CountingWorks Pro, and today we're unpacking one of the most pressing topics for tax professionals this year, probably next year, and the years to come, and that would be tax reform. So with potential tax policy changes on the horizon, the question is, how can tax professionals stay ahead, guide their clients effectively, and capitalize on the planning opportunities this reform period offers? So joining me today is a true expert in the field, Lee Reams Sr. He's the editor-in-chief at CountingWorks, and a veteran lecturer who has trained tens of thousands of tax professionals on navigating the wonderful tax code. So together we'll explore not just the implication of the tax reforms, but actionable strategies for identifying planning opportunities, targeting key client audiences, and marketing your advisory services during this transformative period. So let's dive in. Can you say hello, Lee, before we get started?
Hi, how you doing?
I am good today. So I'm excited anytime I get you on the podcast. You've been through so many tax reform opportunities. I think the last one was in 1986. Is that correct? The last big one.
Well, no, 1987, yeah.
1987. All right. And you've been through it. You've kind of seen the promises, the processes, perhaps the narratives and talking points and how this all works. Obviously, this year with the election and the House, Senate changing hands, there's a good opportunity. Something's going to happen, and there's a lot of different ways this can play out. So let's start here with why you think tax professionals should see tax reform as a huge opportunity rather than a continuing education challenge and more work for them.
Well, first of all, you got to think about all the changes that could come about. And we all know that the Trump wants to retain the TCJA, but do away with the SALT limitation and add an auto interest loan deduction. Whether that happens or not, you got to think about what is in TCJA that can really change and cause havoc. And first of all, the major issues are the tax rates and tax brackets will go back up again if they do away with it. If they retain it, then it'll stay the way it is. And the standard deduction, of course, you think back in 2017, it was 12,700, and then they came in with TCJA and bumped it up to 24,000. And for 2026, 2025 is scheduled to be 30,000. And if TCJA is not passed, it'll drop back down to 15,000. So you'll have more people itemizing. And the child credit, of course, was bumped up from 1,000 to 2,000 with TCJA, and Vance, the incoming vice president, wants to bump it up to $5,000. So there's a lot of things coming down the line here. The SALT limitation's a biggie too. Trump wants to do away with that, and if that happens, you're going to see a huge jump in the number of people who can itemize because and it's going to be the higher income people. So, and of course, remember back in the old days, we had the tier 2 itemized deductions, employee business expenses, home office for the employees, education, legal fees, investment expenses, tax preparation fees. All those would come back if TCJA just goes away. So, and the AMT will come back into play again, which is almost vanished for lesser income people. And of course, the biggie is the estate tax exemption. So that will almost get cut in half if TCJA goes away. So, and we got the 1998 pass-through deduction, which gave a lot of business a little extra deduction. So anyway, there's just a lot of opportunities here. We can, as we go through here, we can go over some of his other campaign promises as well. So. But
so let's talk about just from a tax pro's point of view. So I think there's three scenarios. Let me back up here. So there's three scenarios. There's one that they don't do much. They kind of they just extend what was there before. The second one is they go in and make significant changes. I think, half of it is extending what was there before, half of it is new things like you're talking about. Or a third one is just a complete reform in some ways, where they make tariffs the top revenue gainer, and they kind of throw out the whole thing. I think we're probably looking at number two, where it's a 50% of the extension, 50% new things or changes. From a tax professional's point of view, with clients asking all these questions, first of all, the timing that I'm hearing from my lobbyist friends, this really won't happen until late 2025. Maybe they get in there and get things done fairly quickly, but people are afraid of retroactive changes. They're talking about getting rid of the EV tax credit. The auto industry obviously is using that as a talking point to drive sales. Go buy your EV now before, you perhaps lose it in 2025. But, from a tax professional's point of view, how do you deal with all that uncertainty? Do you proactively offer tax planning, tax reform, tax planning packages? Kind of, are you ending up answering a lot of free questions from your clients that are just doing tax prep? So, how would you advise a tax professional to handle kind of all this uncertainty from their client's point of view?
Well, for the experienced tax professional, he just got to think about what he did in 2017 when they brought in TCJA, because that just turned everything upside down. And I can see this is going to turn everything upside down too, because think about his campaign promises: do away with the SALT limit, not taxing tips, overtime pay, and Social Security benefits, have a deduction for car loan interest, and even a tax credit for family caregivers. So there's a lot of differences. And for the businesses, he wants to bring back the 100% bonus depreciation, expense research and development costs, be less stringent on interest deduction limitations, and wants to cut the corporate tax rate from 21 to 15%. So there's a lot coming up, and even they're even talking about doing away with the repealing the Inflation Reduction Act, which had the 15% corporate alternative minimum tax, had the 22 green energy credits, which would include the EV credits, and they want to cut the increased IRS funding. So that's a whole new ball game as well. So there's a lot to think about, and just about anything they do is going to affect every taxpayer that there is out there. So.
But going back to you as the tax professional, how are you going to deal with all these inbound? So I understand all the scope of work, but what is your recommendation? Do you set up, as I suggested, maybe get more clients into tax planning consultations, some sort of quarterly deal? Maybe you do an annual special tax reform planning package. How do you deal with clients that are going to be asking all these questions that they've read on the internet? How am I going to deal with this? What would be your advice there for the tax pro to, basically capitalize and then even handle all this inbound inquiries?
Well, I think the tax pro needs to go through his client base and see who's going to be the most potential for big change, and actually suggest those folks come in for a tax planning session to talk about what they can do. However, we're a little premature on that, because we don't know what Congress is going to do yet. So, but for planning purposes, things like the estate tax exemption, some people may want to step up their gifts and stuff right now in preparation for having that cut, even though they don't know for sure it's going to happen or not. And then other people who are planning on adding business assets may want to wait until they see if the 100% bonus depreciation comes back or not. And then those who have the SALT limit gets eliminated. You're going to have lots of people who you're going to have to talk to about. They're going to have to be itemizing their deductions again, when that might be taking a standard deduction. So there's just a lot of everybody's going to be affected a little bit differently. You got to look at your client base and go through them, and then start educating them and talking about coming in for some planning sessions. And that's, it's just it's upsetting the whole tax program here. That's all.
Well, yeah, but so would we not say in a world with, we have tech, AI is coming in, we have all these different threats and different disruptions that in reality, a reset might be good for, I mean, it's good for business, that's for sure. It's not maybe good for your time. But I would say that most tax professionals will be highly sought after in the next few years for sure. You had mentioned before some of these, the child tax credit. I've heard the earned income tax credit increasing. And then the reason what they're saying is they want to do a full welfare reform and just simplify everything. There's a huge bureaucracy of people that that manage all these programs, and they're just saying, well, let's get rid of all that complexity and just give people that are working, that are earning this, that deserve to have more children, more expenses, a larger sum at the beginning, and just call it a day. What are your thoughts on whether or not maybe something like that could actually get through? Because it seems to talk to both parties. It's like, hey, the Democrats want higher child tax credits, earned income tax credits, but at the same time, that means they're gutting the bureaucracy, and which means there's obviously jobs and lots of people that would be out. What are your thoughts on using the tax code that way to help actually start cutting the deficit? So I think the deficit and tax cuts are the biggest issues facing the country right now. And something needs to be done, and there's going to be some pain here or there. But what are you thinking about? That's kind of the background on the welfare reform. Or do you think it's all talk and there's just the deep state won't let it get through? What are you thinking?
Well, if Vance, he brought up the $5,000 tax credit, but it hasn't been mentioned since. I don't know what will happen there. Of course, I think that the Democratic side of the Congress would jump all over that, so he would get help with that. And I think the biggest issues here are probably some of the business issues, and that's where but we don't know what they're going to do for sure. So if they keep TCJA, the 199A deduction will stay with us. If they don't, that'll probably go away. And there is talk about, some people still talking about flat tax, but they've been talking about that for years and nothing's ever happened. So I'm not too worried about that. So I just think there's just a lot of upheaval here, Lee, that's going to give all sorts of opportunities for tax planning with your clients. And the only way you're going to do that is to educate them as you go along and keep them informed and let them know what's happening, and then suggest that they come in if you want to without being too proactive. Or if you want to be really proactive, then, like I say, go through your client base, pick out the ones that you want to offer some special planning session with, or you might even hold an online course with them. The modern age of like we're doing right here. You can use Zoom and have your client join in, and you can talk to them about the changes, and then tell them you want to come in and talk about how they apply to you specifically. Then they can make an appointment and do that. So there's lots of opportunities here, and don't let the modern age of communication get in your way. You're looking at an old guy here, but I still do it. So.
Well, it's interesting you're bringing it up because CountingWorks Pro, we just had a webinar on generational marketing and understanding the media that people absorb now is not just a blog article, for example. They're listening to podcasts, they're watching webinars, they're on social media, they're getting snippets from TikTok, for God's sakes, and they're using those also as search engines. So what people forget now is, just even when it comes to like a website, they always thought, well, I just put up a website and people will come. Well, that's not the reality here anymore. And understanding that you might have boomer clients, you might have Gen X, you might have millennials, you might have Gen Z, there might be a mix of clients, gig economy people. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. And if you're starting to utilize different ways to communicate with them, I think that's going to be much more successful for you. You had mentioned a little bit about the business side of things. So if I'm going to go two ways, I'm going to go individual and then I'm going to go into the business thing. So the individual side, if SALT is repealed and you used to bunch every other year, I assume you want to put off your bunching for the year, and when you can start itemizing and taking advantage of all this. And so would next year, you would, even if it hasn't happened yet, would you start planning that way? Is that one, strategy?
That's one strategy as well, yeah, because some of these people right now, especially the lower income people, uh, can use the standard deduction, but they might be marginally close to itemizing. That's when you want to use your bunching strategy and maybe only pay one payment of your property taxes 1 year and three the next, and move your charitable contributions all into 1 year and kind of skimp on them next. It's kind of those kinds of planning sessions that can really help. And again, let's say if you're really a proactive tax preparer and you could just do several little podcasts like we're doing right here and talk about how that affects certain levels of your clients, and maybe the next one's going to be the higher ender clients. So you could talk about, one would be bunching, one would be maybe when you wouldn't bunch, and others what you can do with the about purchasing assets for your business if you want to wait for the 100% bonus. There's a whole bunch of things here. So you got to think about them and how they apply to your clients, and put together little podcasts.
So what you're talking about is segmenting, and we're obviously big on segmenting with our clients and our subscribers, and being able to target different segments of your client base with different messaging. So you had mentioned, perhaps you even do a podcast or a webinar where, one, I have my high income earners, I invite them, I market them. Perhaps I do a blog article backed up by a podcast or maybe a white paper about all the issues that tax reform, how would it affect high income earners. Another one you just mentioned is business owners. So they need guidance on optimizing deductions, managing cash flow, how this all works together. How about retirees? How is this going to affect them? What is going to happen with Social Security, taxable? Are there going to be any changes there? Individuals in high tax states, so anyone who was affected by SALT before. So these are ways that you can segment your client base around just different pain points and different needs, and then how tax reform might actually affect them. So as mentioning, what would I do? I would create blog content around that. I would target that blog content and that messaging. I would make the copy talk to that user. I would have images if it's a high income earner, and make maybe perhaps little landing pages that I could then email out to my client base. Invite them to invite their friends, right? Ask them to invite their friends, and do this free session where you could do a recorded and or webinar, put it on YouTube, get people to ask it. And then the call to action is, here I am offering, let's just throw a dollar volume on it, $24.95 for a tax reform planning appointment. And this is what it looks like. So that's a way you can definitely market and communicate. So I want to get into how about the tax person says, I'm not going to do anything. I'm too busy. We've seen it even through some of the things in our webinars where we're talking about AI technology, and they're like, why would I use this? I just prepare tax returns. What do you say to that type of mindset in a tax reform, disruption period, and an AI tech disruption period? The opportunities seem to be in tax planning, not historical stuff. This is probably the biggest tax planning opportunity for both business owners and individuals in our, for the last 20 years, a big one. 2017. But what do you say to that kind of mindset where this is the way I do things, I'm not changing, let the clients get their information from CNN and Fox News?
Well, assuming that CNN and Fox News are giving the right answers, that's the next problem. So, because they want to give a little overview of things, they don't really get down the nitty gritties of each client's specific circumstances, which will change what they do, and all information doesn't fit all clients. So that's the problem. So people get the wrong ideas and they listen to the news and stuff like that. So you really need to break this down. And a lot of people are like you say, they just say, well, that's all I'm doing is preparing taxes, and I don't want to worry about the rest of it. I want to work for 3 months out of the year and then take the rest of it off. But this day and age, the number of tax preparers is decreasing because a lot of them are getting older and are retiring, and there's fewer around. So there is a shortage of preparers. So you can get some business in here to increase your business, and you can make this a year-round business almost. Because put people on extension and do them later on in the year. So you got to think your way through the whole thing. You know, it's just, and it gets more complicated with this tax reform coming through, but that generates business for you. So it makes things better. And you can also think about raising the fees if they go back to the old rates, because you're going to be itemizing your deductions when you weren't before. So there's a lot to think about here. So and you got to think about how to become more efficient too. So, you know, pre-schedule your appointments, talk to people during the year, make sure they know what they're doing, give them the information you need, send them their organizer, make sure your organizer includes all the information, but isn't so complicated that they throw it aside. That's another problem too. So you see some of these organizers off these software companies that getting several pages long, and people get lost in them, and they just say, I don't want to do that, and they start filling out their little scratch paper. So I can remember one time a guy came into my office, and he came in a brown paper bag as a new client. I said, well, where's your stuff? And he dumped the receipts out of my desk out of his brown paper bag. I didn't say anything. I picked the first one up. I said, boy, this is going to get expensive. And he and his wife very quickly reorganized everything. They really moved out. So you know, you can be subtle about these kinds of things. But I think with modern age, doing something like we're doing right here with this podcast with your clients is really a good idea. And perhaps we at CountingWorks can put together some for you ahead of time. So we'll see how this works out.
Yeah, I mean, some of the technology we're doing now with just our blog articles, we have basically creating digital AI-enabled podcasts on subjects. We've already done that with the tax reform. We already did a kind of a 15-minute conversation about it. We've done blog articles for clients. You had mentioned there is a shortage. Obviously, the boomer age is happening. The retirement age is what I'm talking about. So it's a real opportunity too for selling your practices. But there's not enough people coming in. So the question is, there's a forecast of about 10 million more taxpayers coming on that will be, needing these type of skills. So let's talk a little bit about AI and how you can use AI to do some of this educational content. So the goal here, I think, is we're pretty sure most go, I need to communicate to my clients. You don't want them to get propaganda narratives from mainstream media. You want them to get it from the source, unbiased. This is about your tax position. I want to help you minimize, pay your fair share, pay what you legally need to, but don't just throw it away. So utilizing the tax code, we can save you money. A higher after yield is more money in your pocket, right? So technology side, the AI tools. So for example, we basically took, you are the author of the Big Book of Taxes. You're an author of tons of different CPE courses, blog articles. We trained our model, our AI model on top of this with all this information. And you are utilizing AI to do a lot of, make your life a lot simpler. What would you say, like give a couple of use cases of how AI, if I'm a tax pro, I'm a busy tax pro, some use cases how they should be using AI today to help them serve their clients better in a tax reform. So they're getting all these questions. How do they respond to those questions without a research, department? Can AI do that for them?
Well, for instance, we have what we call a forum for our students that take our CPE courses, and they ask questions and I respond to them. My biggest problem is having the time to type out a response. So even when I know the answer, I'll go to AI and I'll ask the question. It'll type out the response for me, and I just cut and paste it into an email and send it on to the students. So it serves multiple purposes. It'll even write letters to your clients. The client might email you and ask you a question. You post the question on the AI. It comes back a response. You look at it, see if that's what you want to say. Just cut and paste it, mail it, and email it back to the client. all this cuts your time way down and really helps out. So you can do all sorts of, you can correspond back with the IRS, even with AI, post a question, and it really, but and just person asked me yesterday, can they do their the policy for keeping your stuff safe? What is that? What's that called, Lee?
Talking about like the security stuff, the WISP.
Yeah, the WISP. Yeah, the
Yeah.
WISP. And it'll even write a WISP policy for you. So because we loaded the 50-page WISP document from the IRS into AI, and it now knows everything about what the IRS wants you to do. So, and that's what we do. We load everything we can in there. Every day we load something new in there. Every week when the IRS bulletin comes out, we load that into the AI. So it's constantly updating. So, and we'll, as the pubs come available for 2015, we'll start loading those in. So
225, you mean? 215?
oh, I did it again.
Yeah, I hope we're not going that far backwards.
I want to go.
No, we're not going that far back in time. But so the reality here is that it's, I mean, the model we built is on top of ChatGPT. We're now bringing multiple versions of ChatGPT into kind of the underlying base of our model. And then we're now going to start over time putting in other models, not just ChatGPT, because each one is better at different things. But the reality is you need this knowledge base on top of it to have really trusted analysis. And that's why you can utilize and trust the AI to come out with some really good results. So I think you're saying AI can help. Let's get out and educate our clients. Let's do webinars. Let's write these blogs. These are all ways that we can really take advantage in some ways, even though you're going to have a lot bigger workload, but you can take advantage of these opportunities. So I think we've covered a lot of this. And one thing I wanted to back up to, we talked about segmenting the client base a little bit more. Hey, a way to do this is ask the AI, hey, I want to do 4 different content pillars. And what a content pillar is let's say we're going to focus on those SALT clients what will happen to them? Go and ask the AI tool, hey, I want to do a podcast on this, or I want to write a blog about this, and it's affecting this target audience. Can you give me some strategies that I can walk away with? So instead of making this super complex for you, the AI is going to spit this out and going to make it really easy. And that's the way you can now target, really, kind of go after these different niches, and you're going to be much more successful. And more importantly, think about it. You can also charge different price levels. So instead of one size fits all, because a high net worth person versus a SALT versus a business owner, the value you're adding is much different, right? So, people are willing to pay. If you're saving me tens of thousands of dollars, I'm willing to pay you more. So definitely start thinking about that. So I think we've given a pretty good overview of what's happening with tax reform, what the opportunities are. Become a thought leader, educate your clients, get out there on social, email your clients, keep them up to date, write blog articles, all of this. So, one thing that I always say is tax preparation is very historical. It's reactive. What did my client do last year? And now I got to figure it out. At that time, it's hard to clean up the mess. So, what are your advice about being more proactive? I know you write content for our newsletters, and it's a lot about life events and trying to communicate with clients throughout the year. So we identify an episode, something that will have a tax consequence, and make them think about it before they make the decision. So kind of what is your advice on getting tax pros to be more proactive versus kind of that historical reactive, hey, I'm just doing a historical tax return. At that point, you're just putting numbers into a software product versus really assisting your clients long-term. So how do you kind of advise clients there?
Well, I think the biggest advice you can give your client is to contact you before they make any big moves. They're going to do a tax-free exchange, they need to talk to you first. They're going to buy or sell a rental, they need to talk to you first. They're going to buy a house, they're going to need to talk to you first. You can give them advice to whether they can really afford the house or not. Tell them what the tax benefits are, and for a rental, and I remember when I used to tell clients that's before we had the new rule come in, where you had to where you have a rental, people, I tell them move into the rental for 2 years and sell it and take an exclusion. And of course, the wives didn't think that was too cool, but but those are the kinds of things you can do. But that the only way they know that is if you communicate with them. So, and then when you have their appointment with them for this tax season coming up, you might even start talking about tax reforms coming, and maybe you need to start prepping for that, and coming back later for an appointment to go over the potential that might affect you personally. So during tax season is not a bad time to even start putting the ideas in their mind to contact you before they do anything. So,
but the key there is communication and being proactively communicating with clients, having that monthly email newsletter, having those social posts year round. One thing you had mentioned about complex questionnaires, at CountingWorks Pro, we've developed, you can create any sort of intake form, but a thought is, why don't you develop a tax reform intake form that then qualifies your clients for you? Then you can put them into your buckets and segments, and there may be some things, big life decisions on the horizon that you just aren't asking, but send that now. And then take that data, and then that could be a planning opportunity. That could be a proactive way to really reach out and help your clients out. I mean, they're going to appreciate your responsiveness, your proactivity. They're going to refer more clients to you, right? And I guarantee you, they're probably going to be willing to pay more for your services as well. So I think that is a good coverage of kind of this tax reform. What are the opportunities out there? You have something to add? Go ahead. I was going to give you one last thought.
one last thought is during the tax season this year, you can start segregating your clients by make a list of clients who will be affected by the SALT change, be affected by these business changes, and then you know which ones to contact afterwards about the tax reform. So
yeah, just add it in your CRM as a tag, or create, segments. And that's what I'm saying. We get our clients, we even have our clients sending specialized newsletters to each segment. I mean, so that's how granular it should be. We have clients that will have, 10 landing pages, one for each type of group, but all good stuff. So again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant. Tax reform periods can be challenging. They can be stressful. But I think the biggest issue is they can be a golden opportunity to deepen your client relationships, really expand your services and grow your practice. Take advantage, especially if you're, nearing retirement age. Why not boost the top level revenue, digitize your processes? By the way, the multiple someone will pay for a digitized firm that is proactive, has high retention rates, is much higher than 1 point revenue versus someone who has all sorts of problems, isn't digitized, doing stuff by paper. Think about it. If you can get a 1.2 versus a 0.7, that's a 50 basis points difference. If you're selling an asset that's $1 million, that's a huge number. So a small investment today, a little pain can go a long way. So staying ahead of the curve is key. As usual, if you have any questions about some of the things we talked about, specifically communicating with your clients proactively on autopilot, that's what CountingWorks Pro does. We have a ton of resources specifically for this generational marketing, doing the audio blogs. We have a lot of different technology coming out that is really cool. So until next time, keep growing, keep innovating, and keep making a difference for your clients. I appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll see you at our next podcast. Thank you.
happy holidays.